Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bunny Cakes, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel for the first time. So today I am going to be reviewing another true crime book. I promise it won't always be true crime and horror. It will just probably mostly be true crime and horror because that's what I'm into right now. Um, the book that I will be reviewing is The Good Nurse, A True Story of Medicine, Madness, and Murder by Charles Graeber. This is a book about a nurse named Charlie Cullen who killed, as far as they know, around 300 people, possibly, probably more. He was dubbed the Angel of Death, and he was arrested in December 2003, so this isn't a terribly old case either. Um, and it was really kind of wild, how much he got away with and how he got away with it and how close he came to it. And reading it, because it talks in depth about the way he got the medications that he used to kill people in the hospitals that he worked in. It's made me watch nurses at hospitals more. So right as I was reading this book, my fiance ended up in the hospital with a kidney stone. And so, like, while I was sitting there, I was watching the nurses way more closely than I ordinarily would have. And I know the nurses at the small town hospital we went to, um, are trustworthy. I mean, a lot of these women and men that are nurses are people that he and I went to high school with, so they're not people that I think are angels of death or anything. Um, Now with Charlie Cullen, he most certainly was not an angel of mercy. I think in the beginning he seems to have thought that he was, but it's more that he's doing it because he can. He's challenging himself. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and he's doing it because things aren't going well in his own life. Um, the synopsis for this is: after his December 2003 arrest, registered nurse Charlie Cullen was quickly dubbed the Angel of Death by the media. But Cullen was no mercy killer, nor was he a simple monster. He was a favorite son, husband, beloved father, best friend, and celebrated caregiver. Implicated in the deaths of as many as 300 patients, he was also perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history. Cullen's murderous career in the world's most trusted profession spanned 16 years in 9 hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and when, in April of 2007, Charles Cullen was marched from his final sentencing in an Allentown, Pennsylvania courthouse into a waiting police van, it seemed certain that the chilling secrets of his life, career, and capture would disappear with him. Now, in a riveting piece of investigative journalism nearly 10 years in the making, journalist Charles Graeber presents the whole story for the first time, based on hundreds of pages of previously unseen police records, interviews, wiretap recordings, and videotapes, as well as exclusive jailhouse conversations with Cullen himself and the confidential informant who helped bring him down. The Good Nurse weaves an urgent, terrifying tale of murder, friendship, and betrayal. Graeber's portrait of Cullen depicts a surprisingly intelligent and complicated young man whose promising career was overwhelmed by his compulsion to kill, and whose shy demeanor masked a twisted interior life, hidden even to his family and friends. Were it not for the hard-boiled, unrelenting work of 2 former Newark homicide detectives racing to put together the pieces of Cullen's professional past, and a fellow nurse willing to put everything at risk, including her job and the safety of her children, there's no telling how many more lives could have been lost. In the tradition of In Cold Blood, The Good Nurse does more than chronicle Cullen's deadly career and the breathless efforts to stop him. It paints an incredibly vivid portrait of madness and offers a penetrating look inside America's medical system. Harrowing and irresistibly paced, the book will make you look at medicine, hospitals, and the people who work in them in an entirely different way. And Lord, that's true. Um, and I think what is more disturbing than anything else is the number of close calls that he had with some of these hospitals catching him, where it was brushed under the rug, especially the final hospital. It was swept under the rug. The people, the CEOs and the board members of this hospital just did not want to hear it. They were fighting the police, not helping the police stop a killer. They were worried about their image. And then finally, when it got to the point where it just could not be hidden anymore, the hospital somewhat cooperates. Um, it's really scary, not only because this is a fairly recent case, but just because, I mean, we can't not go to the hospital, especially right now. I mean, we don't want to go to the hospital right now because of the virus and the pandemic that's happening. But on top of that, I mean, this man was working in ICUs and in burn units and hospitals where it's not just the hospital, it's the most vulnerable people in the hospital that he was killing and enjoying killing. And it was so weird that a lot of the time the people would die and he wouldn't even be there. He would just know they were dead. Um, and the way that people seemed to trust him because he was so unassuming. And it also brings up questions because he has a lot of mental health concerns. Like, he's constantly suicidal. He stalks women and he harasses women and he overly attaches, and he's definitely an alcoholic. And I don't necessarily think, I do believe before he really first did his first suicide attempt, I think he was already killing, if I remember it right. So I don't necessarily think it would have prevented him from killing, but I find myself wondering if somebody had paid more attention to his mental health and forced him into therapy, and the therapists had paid more attention and that sort of thing, if our mental health infrastructure in the US had been more sound, I wonder if more lives could have been saved, because they would have gotten him off of the streets and into a facility that would have protected people, and potentially helped him. Now, I don't think he's necessarily somebody who could have been completely rehabilitated. I think he's probably somebody that would have needed to stay in a facility for the rest of his life, but it would have saved lives. If he had been picked up the first time or the second suicide attempt even, hundreds of lives could have been saved. And because he doesn't even know how many people he really truly killed, we'll never know how many lives could have been saved if he had been picked up sooner, if the hospitals would have paid more attention, or if after having the overwhelming amount of evidence that the last hospital had, if they had gone to the police sooner rather than later, if they had reported it and worried more about their patients' lives than their image as a company, if things would have been better, if fewer people would have died. And I think that they definitely would have. This book was well written. You can definitely tell that there were interviews directly with, especially the confidential informant and Cullen himself. It was really well put together. I think it treated the victims decently for the most part. A lot of the main victims that it talks about, they're not just treated as a name and a number. They're treated with some humanity, and you learn some stuff about them. The one thing I didn't like was that the ending seemed kind of rushed. It's just like, yeah, he went to prison, they tried him, he's in prison forever, blah, 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 the end, whatever. I kind of wish the end, as much detail as was put leading up to the case, I wish there had been more than like a single chapter about his trial and the end. And I understand that they can't get a lot of detail because a lot of those records are possibly sealed or just not easily accessible. But yeah, I wish there was more to it. But I like I said, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it. I would recommend it if you're into true crime. But if you are looking at going to the hospital anytime soon, probably not the best book to read, especially if you're going to have surgery or anything. Not that anybody's having any elective surgeries or anything right now. So probably not the best read at the moment, but I think eventually, later, once we get past the pandemic, it's definitely a good read, and I would recommend it. Just not right now. If you're prone to paranoia about hospitals at all, probably not a good idea to read it right now, but later, definitely later. I know it made my hospital experience with my fiance completely different than normal, and it wasn't the first time we've been to the hospital with him for kidney stones. So, like, he has the anesthesiologist and his urologist on his gift card list, and like, if he's not in the hospital with a kidney stone, for a certain period of time, I do believe they start to worry about him because he's a regular. My fiance makes kidney stones for a living, is what we joke. So yeah, I am familiar with hospitals and all of that, but this did change my perspective a little bit, and I looked a little bit more closely as we were going through that experience. So yeah, if you're prone to paranoia with hospitals, and especially right now, probably not the best time to read it, but it's something that you should add to your TBR if you like true crime in the future, because it was a pretty good book. I'm glad that I read it. It's not necessarily a book I would have read on my own, but I read it as part of Peter Maughan's A True Crime Book Club. And yeah, totally enjoyed it. And I would read more by this author. I haven't actually gone and looked him up to see if he's written any more books, but I do think I will at some point do that as I'm digging through my true crime phase right now. So that being said, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for joining me again on my channel. And stay safe, wash your hands, maintain your social distance, don't go out unless absolutely necessary. And thank you to our frontline workers, those people that are working in the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, but not just them, the orderlies, the janitors, the people who are working in the kitchens that are putting themselves at risk. And then on top of that, it's not just our medical workers, our doctors, our nurses, and our EMTs that we need to be concerned about. It's also the girl that's checking out your groceries at the store, and the guy that's pumping your gas at the gas station. All of those people are frontline workers, and we need to keep those essential workers safe by only going out when it's absolutely essential. So stay home and read a book, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.